Hello and welcome to the Shaman's Cave. I'm Renee Baribeau.
Hi everyone, I'm Sandra Ingerman. Welcome.
And today we are going to mark the change. We could say we're going to talk about marking the change, but we're going to mark the change.
Why not mark the change? So on some of our past shows, we've been talking about cycles because we have a lot of things going on simultaneously. We had that really big change in an era in February into a new age. And I've already said this on the Shaman's Cave. I'm a bit of a pessimist about these things. I don't, when everybody says, there's some new age big event and the whole world needs to come together. I like the whole world coming together in love, but I just don't think these magical changes happen without doing such deep personal work. It's just my thing. I'm sorry. So February came and I felt a magical change in the collective. And I felt it in me. I felt it in the collective. I could feel it. I could feel it in the air. I could feel it on Facebook. We still have the shadow side of Facebook, but consciousness all of a sudden started changing. People who were arguing started bringing in more terms of love and light. You could just feel the energy lightening just a little bit. And that was with the astrological change. And then, of course, we entered into the time of the COVID. And so one of the things that's happening for people right now that's being written about in news stories, and it's happening a little bit for me and my husband, is the COVID is not over with yet. I recognize that outside of the United States, we have a lot of international listeners that things are not opening up and people aren't getting the medicine that they need in other cultures. But there is a lot of opening up going on in certain countries. But when you've been inside and like this, and I was with my hoodie for a year, and still am. I'm still wearing it. How do you get to that place? It's not that you're afraid of going out into the public that you're going to get the COVID. It's that you've been pulled into yourself, or you've been pulled out by too many podcasts and too many distractions, whether you're too pulled in or too pulled out. How do you now organize yourself? I'm using the word organization a lot in our last two shows, because in a change, when we're moving through a change, you have to create a new state of organization in your psyche, in your body, in your spirit. And so how do we organize ourselves so that we start moving out the door? Because it's become a big deal for people. It's one of the things that's really being written up about right now is people actually don't know how to get back out. And so the reason we were calling this marking change is that think of this unbelievable period where everybody went in, and hopefully everybody went into their inner world who were listening to the show and made some huge changes. And now there is a change. There's a change in consciousness. There's a change in the stars. How do we now step forward now that there's that change? How do we mark that change by stepping forward?
I can't get quite past the image of you with the hoodie and the mask.
I love it. This is all I wear. So
I know I was all dressed up nice, and I threw my my Cartwright kind of shirt on today because it was a little cold. It's true. I've been thinking, like, I really want to go to the East Coast. I have an older sister who's not in good health, and I know some people after my mother who had got some kind of an infection, and you want to go visit. You want to, but when you go in your mind to think, okay, I'm going to fly to Boston or fly to New York, which is where I usually do when I go to the East Coast, spend a few days in New York, it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel like, just go get a hotel and run the city like I love to do. It's not feeling that so welcoming from my couch. So I think that there's a real move for somebody who, like me, who traveled a couple times a month, to now trying to, get myself in gear to go visit my mom, which to me is an important thing to do. So I think that there's a really important thing about, okay, if we're not going to travel the way we did, how are we going to travel? What is going to be more respectful travel?
yeah, I think that one of the things that I'm not into predictions. And as I've been sharing, Isis has been my spiritual teacher, the Egyptian goddess Isis has been asking us to stay in the present because we could miss the greatest signs of what we have to do to survive what's happening. But at the same time, in looking forward, what people have been saying is, okay, if the COVID moves out or gets handled or however, evolution happens, we're basically facing the climate is staring at us. I mean, it's staring at us. The COVID is just kind of a little curtain. A lot of people died. I'm not saying that the COVID isn't a big thing, but the COVID is keeping us from seeing actually what's happening right now. I don't know. My husband just shared this morning that they found that the Earth axis has tilted. And they said that they don't know the meaning of it. We all know the meaning of that. The Earth axis tilted because of how the waters and the ice are moving on the planet. That's what caused the tilt. That's what they're saying. And they're saying that they don't know what the results of this are going to be. We know what the results of this are going to be. We're already seeing. What I said to my husband is, we're the lobster in the pot. The earthquakes, the storms, the floods, the drought, the fires. What more do we need? It's the lobster in the pot. We're not getting that. We're already boiling. And so the point is about really trying to, as we talked about on another show, The Simple Life, it's what are the changes that we need to make in our life that mark a new change on the planet, because there's a new consciousness on the planet now. The younger generation, and we are so grateful that you're listening to our show, the younger generation is really stepping forward and speaking out and doing what Renee and I did back in the old days and talking about the issues that are really affecting that generation and the generation to come. And so we really have to look at a change, a big change has happened, and how do we mark that? And how do we start getting out into the world? So Renee was talking about conscious traveling, and I was starting to talk about how do you even get out of your house to do conscious traveling. So yeah, people are struggling right now. People are struggling with how do you take that next first step.
Well, and for me, last year I was supposed to be going to the Passion Play, you know, and I didn't, and they moved it back 2 years at the time, and it was as a spiritual marker, and it could be any spiritual marker for you, but this was the one for me. I realized that the clock had been reset, that there was an actual timeout reset button on humanity where we got face to face with our children and our families and our lives and got to look at really what our priorities were. And I'm sure like children missed out on a lot of other things, but I have this sense that this generation of children who got to spend all of that time with their family are going to have a whole different experience than I did when, you know, my mother and father were both working. And so I have this sense that there was a change, a very important change that we can't just gaily move forward from without honoring and saying thank you. Thank you for this time out, this reconsideration of how we're living our lives, and you know how without awareness we were moving at the speed of light.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And people have been complaining about it. You know, everybody's been complaining about it, but it's like the momentum. It's like Renee Baribeau in The Winds of Change has a momentum. Sandra Ingerman and her work has a momentum. And it's almost impossible once that momentum gets started to just stop it. And we just had a stop suddenly, which a helping professional helped me to see that when you stop suddenly like that, it brings up an amazing amount of grief. And it brings up an amazing amount of grief. And I've reflected on that in my life of how I go 1,000% on in my workshops and then come home. And then after the unpacking is done, and I still light candles for my group, I bond with my groups forever. But at some point, I go into a period of grief, and I didn't understand what that was until this man actually said that to me. When we're going full speed and we stop, and think about how many people moved into states of depression and anxiety, a lot of it around their life, their ability to make money, whether they were going to be healthy enough to make it through the COVID. So there were a lot of reasons for depression and anxiety, but is one of them right now, because depression is at an all-time high right now, and anxiety is at an all-time high right now. Is part of that is we had to come to such an abrupt stop, and people have been grieving that. You know, I see it on Facebook constantly, grieving an old life, but also the gifts, as you were sharing, Renee. I see the gifts of family life. I read a beautiful post about how a family is bonding because they're not going out. And so, so what happens is, where I'm trying to go with this is that something happens with all change in our psyche. And spiritual work, how spiritual work and how shamanic work works with helping the psyche make change is by giving the psyche symbols to work with. That's how in shamanism change is worked with. You change an altar, you change paintings, you change symbols, you change a drum, you change a rattle, but you do something to mark that change. And so we thought that, well, what I was thinking, I haven't done this yet for myself, but I was thinking that because I really love to make altars, that I teach people to mark a change in your life, change your altar. Whenever big change happens in your life, change your altar. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start changing my altars, but I'm also going to start building altars to my doorways and outside of my doorways, just to let me know that I'm leaving my house, but I'm still going into sacred space. So there'll be something beautiful outside every single door of my house that will let me know I never left sacred space. And so we thought that maybe I could lead a short journey where you could reflect and look around your house. And basically, what we're talking about in marking time is it means that everything in your life is changing. You're being birthed. We've been going through a dismemberment, which will continue for a while. But there's also a birthing that happens simultaneously. In nature, death and birth happen simultaneously. And so as things are still dying, reflect in your house. What is a sacred object? What can you put maybe on your doorway or right outside your doorway to mark change, that this is a new time? Every step that you take is leading you to a new place in your life, and your house has changed. The energy of your sacred space has changed. So this will be a short journey, and while I get my drum, I don't know, Renee, I didn't let you add to that.
Okay, I will add to it. In the Wind Clan, what we do we have prayer flags. So we presented prayer flags for the year, and we paint them with different symbols on them. So every single month, what we do is we send the one wind home, and we invite the next wind in, so that we're acknowledging that there's a new wind coming in to work with us each and every month. And so I think that what I'm going to do this journey. I'm very looking forward to it. Also, I'm going to create a new set of flags for moving forward and moving back out into the world, because I can start to see where my own hesitation is in it. And what you said about what dies grows. Last week there was people here at my new home, and they were pointing out that somebody brilliantly, I had this altar out front, brilliantly knew that when the tree fell over, that it was a mother tree. I think that's what they called it. And that other little pine trees have grown out from the dead root, the dead log that was there. And that's what's created the sacred altar around my front porch. Wow. That has a Buddha statue planted in the east that the old owners left for me.
Wow. That's a great story.
Yeah. I'll have to send it. I'll share a picture on the Shaman's Cave wall for everyone.
That'd be great. That'll be wonderful. Yeah, so in this short journey, just to bring it all together, is we live in sacred spaces. We have to make our living spaces sacred, just like nature is sacred. We need to turn our homes. I realize that most of them are made with artificial materials, but we can change the energy by bringing in the sacred. And we can change. I've taught workshops in bars where we've been able to do ceremony to move out all the negativity and only have a place of love and light for the group to work. It takes a lot of work, but we do it. So I want you to look around your house, and this is your sacred place to journey, to meditate, to live, to cook. And a change has happened. A big change has happened. Look around your house at different altars that you have. Those of you who aren't familiar with altars, Maybe you have some photos of ancestors, a family on a table somewhere. That's an altar. Maybe you have a candle somewhere. That's an altar. So look around your house and look at where you can put a new candle. Where can you put a new picture of an ancestor? Where can you put a new crystal? Where can you put some beautiful flowers that create sacred space, but actually lead you out the door? So think about actually creating altars that you can walk through and that you can actually build right outside your doorway, so that you're understanding that you're leaving sacred space and you're going into sacred space. I hope this makes sense to people. Do the best that you can. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that you were able to get a sense of the energy of sacred, and that we want to, it's not change the energy, but make sure that you're representing that there's a new change happening and that we're marking change, and that by placing different sacred objects and photos up where you can see them a lot, it says to your psyche something now is different and we're in a new phase of life.
That was wonderful. I was shown that altar I was just telling you about there is like, yeah, well, that was their altar. Now you got to make it your altar. Like go out there and add your figurines and your statues and your rocks. So
yeah,
I got some work to do out there.
Yeah, I can't imagine living with somebody else's altar.
Well, the space, I just thought, okay, that's a really nice space. I'll get back to that one.
Yeah, I'm sure it's absolutely beautiful. And, it's really, and we actually did a show on this, on how to call back the soul of your home, because as we're changing consciousness again and marking time, we want the energy of our houses, our apartments, our homes to mirror back to us our own soulfulness and how we're changing on an energetic level. And the best way to call back the soul of your home is by bringing things in of beauty. And when I talk about bringing things in of beauty, I'm not talking about going out and buying expensive things that were made with no care, that were just, market or just commercial items. When we make altars, we don't use commercial items. We put together materials. we buy from indigenous people who put a lot of energy and know the language of nature, so understand the energy that you're putting in. So slowly, I have students. I actually have a friend who her whole house is an altar and her whole outdoors is an altar. And there are many ways to work with it, but it's about creating sacred space. And when you create sacred space, you don't feel fear. And when you create sacred space and you create a path filled with sacred objects, there's no fear in moving forward on that path. So
reminds me of that beautiful story yesterday. Someone wrote to me on Facebook and said, I'm really moved by your wind whistles, Renee, but I'm on a fixed income. Do you think you would, sell me one for a little bit less? And I thought, well, you asked, so I would. And the next thing you know, she was talking about how she was already introducing the energy of this wind whistle that's coming. That's probably in the box. I don't know which one, especially for her, but clearly the energy of the wind whistle that's going to her knows. And she's already making an extra spot for it on her altar. I was very touched by that.
Yeah, that's so great. That's so beautiful. That's what we want. We want homes filled with, they're living beings. The wind whistles, they're living beings. And they add to the magic of your life and your home, and they add to the meaning. And they help us mark time. Sacred things help us mark time because they remind us that there was a time on the planet where people went through this, and they came through, and we're going to come through. And as long as we keep working with the sacred will always show us where to put our next step.
Well, thank you so much for that journey. And thank you all for everyone who listens to us. Please share our show. Just hit send from YouTube. You can share it on Twitter or your Facebook wall, or you can share it from the Shamans TV. But share this because we need more of the sacred. We need more of people who are marking this change along with us so that as a collective, we start to move into this new space as a group, individually and as a group. So please, and if you would like this in your inbox every week, go over to shamanstv.com and sign up for our newsletter, and you'll get notified every time we drop a new show. So thank you. And thank you, Sandra, for that beautiful journey.
Yeah, thank you, Renee. You always share such amazing wisdom. I love doing the show with you. And thank you, everybody. And thank you for sharing it, where we have a lot of people listening, and there's a lot more to come. So blessings.
Thank you, Sandra.